this lesson, I want to talk a little bit about comparing strings. And so I've created a new Windows form. And again, I'm just going to shrink that up a little bit. We just need a very small form for this demo. And I will put comparing strings as the text of the form. It shows it up in the title bar. And all I'm going to do is create a button. In fact, for the demo, I'm not even going to bother to name that button. We're just going to double click on it. This is going to be the only button we're going to code. But I want to show you a couple things in terms of comparing strings and a few ways you can do it. And then also the realization that in comparing strings, they are case sensitive. So I'm going to create in my code here, I'm just going to call string A equals dog and string B equals dog. And I'll create an if structure. If A is equal to B, we'll have a message box. And the message box will simply say same. Again, just keeping this very, very simple. Else, we'll have a message box that says different. So we're going to compare our two strings, both containing dog. Let's see what we get. And we're told they are different. Now the reason for that, of course, is the comparison is case sensitive. Remember we talked about the ASCII values, and here a capital D has an ASCII value of 68, and the lowercase d has an ASCII value of 100. So when it compares the strings, it's comparing those two values character by character, and it's not a match. They are not the same. Well, how can we make that case insensitive? Well, for one, we could use ToUpper method on both of those and converting them both to uppercase. Or we could also use ToLower on both of those. But let's try this. So now we're told they're the same. So when you're comparing strings and you want to make sure that the strings are the same regardless of the case sensitivity, make sure you change both strings either ToUpper or ToLower. I'm going to comment this out and show you a couple of the ways you can compare strings. And again, I want to make it case insensitive, so I'll do the dot ToUpper. And then there is a string method called CompareTo. And it's a method, so I want parentheses, and inside that method, I'm going to put what I want to compare it to. I'm going to compare it to B changed to upper. Now, that whole phrase, the CompareTo, returns an integer value of either 1 if, in this case, A is larger than B, a -1 if A is less than B, and a 0 if they are the same. So I'm wanting to see if these are the same here. So what I'd want to do is compare that to 0. So if A.ToUpper and B.ToUpper are the same, this would be a 0 value. And we'll double check, make sure that worked. And it did. I'm going to comment that out. Here's another way you can do it. There is a string.compare method in which we can compare a dot, I'm going to use ToLower this time, just a little bit different, and B dot ToLower. And that returns the same values of 1 if the first one is greater than the second, -1 if it's less than the second, or 0 if they're the same. So again, we want to use an equal 0, and that works as well. And there's one more method we could use. This is a great demonstration that the way you code things can be completely different from the way somebody else codes things. There's often more than one way to code something. In fact, almost always there's more than one way to code something. But we could say if A.ToLower dot equals, And this again is a method. Oops, I don't want to comment this out, so I'm going to uncomment that. So it's a method. I get my parentheses, and I can decide what I want to test here is going to be b dot ToLower. And that is a Boolean expression that returns either true or false. It's just checking the equality of those two values. I need one more parenthesis here because for every left paren I need a right paren. My squiggly goes away. We'll test it. And again, that registers the same. So those are really some different ways that you can compare strings. Now the proper way to compare strings really is to use one of these three methods rather than doing a simple is equal to. And the reason for that is based on what these objects are. This can occasionally give you incorrect results. Using the CompareTo or the compare or the equals is actually a better way to compare strings. For the types of things we're writing in this class, probably the first one, this very simple one, will work in most cases, but it's probably a good habit maybe to get into using CompareTo or compare or equals.